someone else find their way into another session so we can get started.
Hey, Mark.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started just with the introduction anyway, and people can catch up when they come in. I'm Mark Faree. I've been working with Drupal professionally for about 4.5 years, almost 5 years now, so made a whole lot of different Drupal sites in a whole lot of different ways. You can find me on Twitter or Drupal.org. I'm just MRF. And if you want to hire me, I'm at ISL Consulting, so talk to them and you can get me. User relationships, if you're not familiar with a module, it's kind of become the definitive solution for linking up your users on the Drupal site. There used to be a lot of different contradictory modules in this space that did the exact same thing, which is basically saying, I know this user for this reason. And user relationships came in, built a really good API, a really huge collection of features, and kind of took over the space. So right now, if you want to do it, this would be the module I would recommend. Planning your relationship strategy is really the first step you need to take before you even install the module. If you set this up wrong and you allow your users to start doing it wrong, coming back from that's going to be a lot of work. So there's a couple of main types of relationships that you're going to see on sites as you're going around the internet. The one-way relationship is sometimes called a stalker relationship. You just follow a person. So that person doesn't know who you are, will maybe get a notification that you're following them, maybe not. It's kind of up to them if they want to know who you are. And you're really interested in what they're saying more than they're interested in the fact that you're following them. So Twitter is the huge example of the one-way relationship. And so if you're using user relationships module, and you're first setting up a new relationship, the checkbox down here is where you're going to worry about if it's a one-way relationship or not. So thinking about relationships and how they're going to be created is really the best way to get started. Now, a two-way relationship is a site like Facebook. So this means that once I create this relationship, I'm going to send a notification to the other user, and the relationship doesn't exist until that other user approves it. So if this person doesn't know who I am, doesn't want anything to do with me, doesn't click yes on the checkbox, then there's never going to be any relationship created there. It's going to stay a pending request for the lifetime of that relationship until that other user does something with it.
Is there a way to make it so two people have to approve for there to be a relationship versus just one?
Yeah, you could definitely hack something together. It's not built in by any means, but there's so many different ways you can play off of these requests. You could definitely put a step in place to prevent it from happening until a second person approves it. Like you were saying, an administrator has to approve the relationship or something?
Or like two people sponsor you or something, you know, or
okay.
Sponsored by two people versus just one or either way, or.
Yeah, you could definitely create that. It would be custom code to get it to happen. So the next thing you need to think about is approvals. So people in user relationships have the option to automatically approve relationships. So you can have a mutual relationship that goes both directions, but doesn't actually require any approval on the other end. So you can claim someone's your friend, and they don't have any ability to say that you're not, basically. They don't have any ability to approve that relationship or delete that relationship. So thinking about whether or not this is something that needs to be approved, if you notice, as soon as you open this up, requires approval is checked, almost always you're going to want some kind of approval. The only time you might turn this off is if you're just doing one-way relationships, you want a site like Twitter, and you want to create as many connections as possible without worrying about the approvals. So another few options you have when you're first creating a relationship, you can make the request expire. This isn't really necessary. You can have a lot of pending requests sitting in there and leave it up to the users to expire, but sometimes it's good to flush those out after a certain amount of time. And another kind of, this one took me a while to figure out, a one-way relationship can be reciprocated. So you can have a one-way relationship that requires approval, but then that person can immediately be presented with the option to also create that same relationship back the other way. So this is a collection of two one-way relationships. So it is not, these two relationships don't have any correlation to each other. You just happen to be connected to the user in the same way they're connected to you. But you're just sending back a totally separate request. So there'd be no way on the back end to sort of look and see without, without looking at two different relationship objects, how these users were connected.
Flickr is a metaphor for that.
Flickr, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I'll have to remember that one.
I mean, it sounds like that's how Flickr works. I don't know if it's exactly that.
Yeah, the thing you get into when you're saying, I didn't name this how to present, how to create Twitter in an hour, because when you get to some of these sites, they say, well, we don't want to be constrained by these kind of options, so we're going to open it up in a lot of different ways, and we're going to make it as easy as possible for people to create relationships. So a lot of times there's features there that you're not going to be able to do exactly, but luckily user relationships opens a lot of APIs, which I'm going to go into a little bit later, and it makes it really easy to play off of these basic requests and do a lot of custom things. And the next big thing you need to think about when you're working on these relationships is, who's going to have access to these relationships. So by default, they're open to everyone, but you may want to have, a premium role on your site who is able to have a certain type of relationship. I worked with a client that wanted to have referrals for people, so they wanted to limit it to only 10 referrals, which I did a custom model for that you can find on Drupal.org, which can limit the number of relationships, but they also wanted to have it where you had to purchase that role. So if I want to have a referral network, I want to have referrals on my site, that's something that's going to increase my business, so they had to purchase that role. So limiting access can be for that, or it can also just be you want to limit spam, or you want to limit, to maybe only site editors can become friends with the other site editors. So you can have sub-networks within your site without doing something complicated like organic groups.
So you're saying you put something at Drupal.org for this?
Yeah, I'll go over that later when I'm covering the API. That's kind of how I became an expert on user relationships, is I got a custom request that wasn't part of the module and I had to become an expert really quickly. So there are a lot of add-on modules that come with the user relationships project. So as soon as you are installing this project, you'll see it's pretty overwhelming, I think, in terms of the amount that you get right to begin with. So at the very first, you have buddy list integration, API integration, blocks, defaults, allow relations, implications, invite, limits, mailer, node access, panels visibility, services, UI, and views. And it seems overwhelming, but a lot of these only offer a really small chunk of functionality, and it's kind of just a way for the module maintainer to break that up and maintain what's going on. So two that you want to think of right when you're first creating these relationships are the elaborations and implications. So the elaborations allows people to provide extra information when they're creating that relationship. So that means that a good thing to think about this one is LinkedIn. That's a kind of LinkedIn feature. I create this relationship and immediately I can say, this was my coworker from 2008 and they're a great person, you'll definitely want to meet this person. So that's how you would elaborate on a relationship. A default is also something you want to think about when you're first creating a relationship, and this allows you to specify this is a MySpace feature. So I don't know if anyone's been on MySpace, it's kind of passe at this point, but everybody that joins is friends with the founder immediately. And so this would be, if you wanted to have something similar on your site, everybody can become friends with a certain person immediately when they sign up. So some people think that's fun. I think Facebook used to do that as well a long time ago, and they stopped doing it. But
which one is that again?
The default. So that's a default relationship that gets triggered every time the person creates it. And then implications kind of works the same way, but it will actually attach two relationships to one user. So if I click manager, as the example here, I can also apply a coworker role to that. So you can have some pretty complicated lists of features there in terms of implications, where without going into something custom like assigning it with a rule, you can have an immediate implication when the role is created. So the very core basic functionality of user relationships is really only covered in two modules. You need to turn on the API and you need to turn on the UI. And everything else is an add-on module. It's not required at all to use the module. And that's what gives you the real basic relationship creation screen, but it also gives you this My Relationships view. So this is basic, Drupal admin pages. There's no, you can't, it's incredibly difficult if you want to go in and customize this, but it gives you that basic core functionality by just turning on those two modules. And you can see how you're related to everyone. You can see requests you send off to people that haven't been approved yet, and you can see broken down by relationship type, what kind of relationships you have. So this really, with just this alone, you can create the relationships on your site, but it doesn't offer any value to your users. Your users now have these relationships, they're connected to these people, but all they now have is a list of all their friends on the site. They can't do anything extra with these people, they can't do anything except find these people very quickly. So this is where all of a sudden we start building tons of add-on modules. So the first one I'm going to go into is user relationships views. So the user relationship view starts to create a lot more flexibility. It comes with a default view, which is just basically a rebuilding of that page we just looked at. But then you have these new arguments and relationships that allow you to open up a lot of different functionality. So I can, all of a sudden now, I can create a block that has all of the comments all of my friends have been making on the site, or I can have a block that says all of the new posts that all of my friends have posted on the new site, or the new image galleries that my friends have posted. So really, when you start to get into views, you start to get into a lot more useful features, because just connecting with people, it's nice, but it doesn't offer anything to the users. So really, with the two core modules in user relationship views, you can offer a lot of the functionality of sites you see, like Twitter, Facebook, on a sort of front-facing side. You also have the ability to turn on a bunch of custom blocks that, once again, serve up the same information, but then that gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of where you display this information. So this is a custom panel I set up that shows you all the different blocks together. So you could, have people seeing their friends or seeing one of these new views through a panel on a lot of different pages. It can be in the sidebar. It can be in different places on the site. So you can call attention to their friends and sort of remind them, this is how your friends are using the site right now. This is how your friends are working with the site. And it brings that a sort of extra incentive for users to log back into the site and see what's going on. So the beyond just views, user relationships API opens up a lot of additional possibilities. Traditionally in Drupal, organic groups has kind of been the idea and really the only way to accomplish something where you have subsets of users in their site and they have different levels of access to different things. User relationships has its own node access system. It's not a standalone node access system, so you can only open up node access. So you can use something like content access, limit access to a certain content type to everybody on the site, and then say only their friends can see this content. So I can have a private status update that only my friends can see. So this allows you to create a more Facebook walled garden kind of system on your site. And it also allows you to have sort of multiple levels of access in your site. You can have, authenticated users can see the person's image galleries, but they can't see the person's premium image galleries. Or authenticated users can see the person's profile, but they can't see the listing of content that they posted. So it allows you to create a lot of different levels of access.
Can that be tied into like a shopping cart of some sort so that somebody has access if they pay for something to see something? No?
Roles can be bought with UberCart, and so that's really the key to really any type of access related system. And user relationships ties in directly to roles. So you can say, I can only create this type of relationship if I purchase this role. So that would be my recommendation.
So UberCard?
Yeah, UberCart, yeah.
Or cart?
That's really the big e-commerce solution in Drupal right now that you can use in Drupal 6.
Is it possible to have other relationships in training when you have more complex things? Can you create your own kind of logic for a relationship?
How do you mean?
Well, that's a good question, I don't know. But something beyond friendly, like become a business partner, or something that maybe has a quantitative formula. Is it possible to create relationships?
You can create as many relationship types as you want. The system is wide open in terms of that.
Right.
You just go into user management relationships, and you can add types with these different prerequisites all day long.
Could you tie business logic into that?
You can. That's coming up in a couple of slides in terms of how to extend the system. But any one of these relationships can be extended.
Mm-hmm.
And so another possibility with the access to content is you can also have panes that are only visible to people within your network. So it allows a lot of fine-grained access control without sort of creating a whole separate system to manage it. And another important component when you are interacting with your friends, you need a way to actually interact with them, because just seeing what your friends are doing, that's great and everything, but you want to also be able to contact them. So user relationships provides several add-on modules that are specifically focused on this. So user relationship mailer is really just a contact mechanism. So anybody that's signed up for Twitter, they get the notifications every time you get a relationship request. That's what user relationship mailer does. It really just handles the sort of core notification settings for the module. It ties in with MindMail, so you can send HTML messages. You could have something custom, with your site's logo in there. So that's nice. User relationship invites ties into the invite module. I don't know, has anyone used the invite module? It allows you to do the typical social networking, right when you're signing up, you say, do you have any friends that you want to sign up as well? So for Drupal, it doesn't mind their address book like you might have had happen on Facebook or one of those places. You just type in a list of addresses. Those people get an email notification. And what user relationships opens up is as soon as that person signs up to the Drupal site, they'll immediately be your friend. So as soon as they go on through that link and create that invite relationship, they'll immediately be your friend. So it's a way to have your users bring other users to your site. Private message is a pretty nice module by itself. It basically mimics Facebook's mailbox. So I don't know if anyone's used that or gotten messages through that, but it's a way to speak with the other people on your site without everybody else seeing it. Sometimes you don't want a wall post, you want something that happens behind the scenes. So private message happens behind the scenes, only you and the other users see it, but it ties in with user relationships, which basically allows you to plug in the username of anybody in your relationship network. And if that is turned on, you can send. So you can send private messages to all your friends, you can send private messages to all your referral network, you can send private messages to all your followers, depending on how you want to set that up for your site.
Is there any way to do something if you want people to be able to communicate using video phone or Skype? Is there a module to allow people to talk and see each other?
I haven't seen that. Anybody else tried that out? It would surprise me if there wasn't something out there that at least attempted that, but I'm not sure. And I know you can have a little Skype Meet button, but tying that into something like this, I don't know. And collaborations we've already covered. That's providing more information about how you're connected to a person. How do you know this person? It's another way to look at that. And now we get to, for me, the interesting part about user relationships. A lot of the previous attempts at relationships, they didn't really, I guess, play well with the rest of Drupal. They kind of were off in their own world. They did everything their own way. And if you had one relationship system, it didn't really talk to the other relationships. And user relationships tries to open up its information to everybody. So every time you create a relationship, there's a relationship object there. Any other module can call these API functions. It can load the relationship. Another module can delete the relationship. Another module can request a new relationship. And it can also edit, which I didn't put that one up there, but it can edit the relationship itself. So if you need to write a module that ties into user relationships, you have a lot of access to what's already there, and you can load that up really well. And for the non-module developers out there, user relationships also has a pretty awesome rules integration. So you can trigger rules. Is everybody familiar with rules and how that works, or should I get into that? So rules basically allows you to, it waits for an action to happen on your site, it waits for some activity to happen on your site, and then you can have a system of other actions that are going to follow behind that. So I was listening to Nate's presentation yesterday, and he described it as basically a way to program a whole Drupal site without writing one line of code. Because you can trigger multiple chains of events, wait for another chain of events to happen, and you can do that all through a UI. So you're basically building complex programming logic with a UI. And so you can use rules to trigger a lot of things. You know, if you don't want to use the mailer module, you can trigger a custom email. If you want to notify an administrator every time a new relationship is created, you can do that. If you want to, create a new node, well, I don't know why you would want to do that, but you have that capability through rules without having to write your own module that implements the API. And so next up is the alternatives. So at the beginning of the presentation, I said there weren't a lot of alternatives, but I guess it just depends on how much work you want to do, what kind of alternatives are out there. So the flag module, has anybody heard of the flag module? Everybody familiar with the flag module? So this is a pretty powerful module in Drupal space these days, and it basically, it kind of does what a user relationship system does. It says, I have this kind of relationship with this piece of content or this user. But what flag module doesn't do is create any system around that. It's completely wide open in terms of what you flag. So flag module can power a bookmarking system. Flag module could power a user system, but then you would be responsible for displaying all those lists of people, of building a system that showed who has, received relationships. And there's an add-on to flag module called flag friend, which kind of opens up some of that functionality, but it doesn't provide it in the same comprehensive way that user relationships does. Flag module has a whole lot of uses where user relationships is a single use that focuses on users, and it really focuses on providing those features you see from other social networking sites. It doesn't focus on, it focuses less on providing a comprehensive system and more on providing a really good user system. So if you're already a hardcore Drupal developer and you already know flag module, it might be worth taking a look if you're going to be creating a really simple friend system. But if you're going to have a lot of client requests coming down the road and you don't want to code those yourselves, better to go with something like user relationships that does a lot of the work for you. And it looks like I talked really fast and got through my slides really quickly, so if I can open this up for questions right now if anybody has any features or things they're looking about.
So do they have the same thing that you're talking about where instead of being geared towards social, it's geared for business relationships? Is there a module that does the same thing?
So user relationships is flexible in terms of that. You just need to name your relationship correctly and then set up the rules in the same way you would on a business site. So you look at the kind of things that happen on a LinkedIn in terms of approvals and recommendations and that kind of thing. And you just need to make sure that you're following the similar kind of pattern in how you're creating those relationships.
So there isn't a separate one that's designed for like ranking somebody, how good the work they do, that kind of stuff?
Not that I've seen, no.
Can you show the work that you did using this? Like a
Yeah,
case
so
study?
yeah, the custom module that I did. So this is how I got painfully introduced to user relationships. I had a client that wanted to provide the ability to limit the number of relationships. Now, most social networking sites, the use case is I want to open up as many possible connections as possible because that means more people on my site and more people for that person to interact with. But their use case was they wanted a referral network that was limited per person. So once that's turned on, let me see if I can turn that on. It really just provides a couple more checkboxes for that new relationship.
Could you use this to that two people bring you in, or does this not have that?
Sorry, what was that?
So you, instead of it just being referred by one person, you're referred by two people? It's like you want to join a country club, you usually think of more than, say, one person, you need a couple people to refer or recommend. Those.
Oh, multiple referrals?
And then if you get two people that do that, then boom.
That would be, once again, a custom module. What this does is if you go back to our relationship creation screen now, and we add a type, or actually it'd be better to go to an existing type. You've got limits for each role. So each role that is enabled, which right now we have, because we don't have any roles checked, that means all of them are enabled, we can set an individual limit per role. So it provides a way to, limit that functionality.
Were you able to do that just with hooks, or based on the API that was exposed?
This is based entirely on the user relationships API. So it's don't look at the documentation on Drupal.org would be my recommendation if you're building anything off of it. Look straight at the API files. That's pretty out of date. And I ran into the only thing I had to do custom was I couldn't cancel a relationship in the middle of the relationship. So once it was being created, there wasn't a way to cancel it while it was still in between being created and not quite created yet. So I had to do something custom there. But in terms of everything else, I was able to do it through the API.
Pretty good.
I used to use user relationships to do like a federated login from another social network. Like if you wanted to log in with your Facebook account or your Google account.
I was actually just thinking about that during the, I just watched the Facebook presentation, and I was thinking how cool it would be if I could immediately find all my Facebook friends and tag them with a user relationship on the site. So nothing yet, but maybe if I get really ambitious next weekend, I don't know.
Yeah, I'll help you with that.
Okay, sounds good.
Just looking around and stuff, because the question that came to my mind was like, could you have CCK fields or node profile, like profile fields that were private but not, but public to your buddies, your friends, or whatever. It looks like there's a couple modules to do that. So that's
Yeah,
she has a comment, but
there's integration on, I think, CCK field privacy
Yeah.
side with user relationships, so they're aware of user relationships and they're paying attention to it.
so you could have like fields that are private to the general public but accessible to your friends, right?
Right,
So,
right.
okay. My question is actually, is there anything like that for node access? Like, could you have only your friends can see the nodes you've authored or something like that?
So yeah, so the node access system, it works on top of other access control systems. So let me turn that one on as well.
Oh, that's part of user relationships itself?
User relationships has a user relationships access
Oh,
module.
okay.
And so basically you go into the content type and you can say, I want to open it up for an individual type of relationship. So it works pretty well. Node access tends to be problematic, especially when you have multiple modules, but user relationships puts itself at the bottom of the stack and kind of expects you to have done node access another way, and it just says, I'm going to open this up after it's already been closed some other way. Any other questions?
Do you have any live site that using user relationships with Drupal right now?
Live site.
That you can, just want to see what.
I'm trying to think. No, I don't have any that are up right now. All of them are still in beta, so
Okay.
yeah.
What has made this module so successful? I mean, it took over from a number of other modules, and I mean, is it the way it's broken up into different, multiple modules? And I just wonder.
Honestly, I think it was just managing the issue queue. This type of module isn't always installed. A lot of times a developer will try to do something like the flag module and make it custom, whereas user relationships managed this issue queue, answered a lot of feature requests, and got those features plugged into the module. You can see how many contributed modules they have tacked onto it. So I think that's how they sort of got themselves to take over the place, because it's easy for a user to go in and see, if I plug this in, I'm going to be able to get support, and if I plug in that other module, it'll break next week and I'll never know how to fix it.
I want to build something with kind of a tiered author and editor system, and I was wondering how you think something like the networking pieces here would work with that idea. So you could have different people sign themselves up, author something, a series of editors would have permissions to look at it or promote it, and then by gradations there'd be different levels of each of those to where that it could kind of self-run a user article, blog type site, a complex one, something with maybe 500,000 articles or something. Do you think this is scalable to that sense, or what would you use to try to create a system like
I honestly would probably use flag in that case, just for the scalability concerns. I've never seen user relationships scale. I don't know if anyone's running a large social network off of it. If anybody is, they haven't come out and raised their hand and said that they are. But I know for certain that flag would scale, and I can't say with any certainty that this would. Any other questions?
Does Drupal SN use.com use user relationships?
I haven't checked that out.
That's the one I just, yeah, I don't know if they do. That's the only, that's like the Drupal social network I just thought of, so I might be using it.
You can, if you want to try it out really quickly, the new Acquia distribution is supposed to be for a, you know, a business social network, includes user relationships in it. So that kind of, it gives you a lot of content to work with immediately, so you can try it out.
Was that Drupal Commons?
Drupal Commons, yeah. Let's see,
So Drupal Commons has got thousands of members, hasn't it? Like if you go to commons.acquia.com, it's got thousands of members. So that's another production site you can use a relationship.
oh, it's definitely production ready. It's in beta 6, but that it's been stepping through betas for almost a year now, as I've been watching it. So I would definitely say it's fine for production site. It just in terms of the scale of the number of relationships, and then when you're dealing with some of that content access control based off of it, I'm not sure at what point user relationships wouldn't be able to handle that well. The nice part is you do have that API available to you, so you can create, you know, it'd be possible to offload, you know, maybe the creation of the relationships or when those get created to a task that's running in the background. There would be ways you can scale user relationships pretty easily, I think.
Is there much correlation between, say, the Facebook app and user relationship?
Within what?
With the Facebook app, is there much correlation between the user relationships API and Facebook app, say, or other social apps?
There's no integration right now with other social apps.
Or no correlation, not so much an integration.
A lot of the features are stolen directly from popular platforms, basically. So it's, I think a lot of it just comes from requests. You know, I want my site to work like X, I want my site to work like X, and then you get an add-on module to user relationships that adds that kind of functionality.
Are there big ones that are missing?
Not that I ran across. I think that, you know, if user relationships has taken on a big chunk of, you know, features right now, and so now it's just a matter of getting everything, you know, worked out, making sure everything, you know, works together really well, and it'll definitely have a full release for Drupal 7, I would say. It might not ever get to the full release for Drupal 6.
So how long did it take you to make that customization and from figuring this out and doing it? What was your timeline and how difficult was that experience?
I had something that worked within a couple of days, and then something that was ready to post to Drupal.org took a lot longer because I had to make it work for everybody instead of just for my particular relationship, my particular use case. So.
Then you start thinking about documentation.
Yeah.
I need a README file now.
Yeah. And I'm already getting different feature requests from people to add on to my module, which I didn't think had much of a use case. So.
And were you pretty good at PHP before?
I learned PHP at the same time I learned Drupal, so it's, you know, I started out as a themer and I quickly became a module developer because, you know, that Drupal themers have to know a little bit of PHP, so.
Well, go ahead.
So any more questions or how to do X with your site or any ideas about how you might use user relationships? Or?
You know, I'm thinking, you know, I work with interior designers, so you have like a client base of different projects, or whatever your business is, you have a series of projects. Would you use this to sort of then work with interrelated sort of groups so that they could talk amongst themselves about project-related concepts that people provide from all the other groups? Is that the organic groups?
That's better territory for organic groups because this creates one-to-one relationships. So you'd have to create some really complicated rules that were automatically assigning a relationship to everybody else in the group. So I think organic groups would be better for that.
What do you mean by organic groups?
Organic groups is another Drupal module. The best example of that is just groups.drupal.org. And what it does is ties users around a specific, you know, idea, you know, use case. So there's, you know, the San Francisco Drupal users group, there's the Berkeley Drupal users group, and there's user groups around, integration with mobile, that kind of thing. So, they're posting content, only members of the group, you can limit it where only members of the group see the content, and that kind of thing.
So I'm just thinking aloud here. So I'm working with Dave's modules, which are great. This looks great. I'm trying to see if I'm looking at relaunching a site, and I'd like to have the content visible both on Facebook and in an external website. And so I'm thinking here that one of the things that might have to be done is when an account is created both in the Drupal site and in the Facebook site, maybe I could query Facebook, find out what relationships are created, and then I guess I'd have to create them here again? No, that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, because these relationships are all separate. So these relationships, they don't have any knowledge of what else is going on with the site. If you want to create one automatically, it's going to be a model that's creating those ones automatically based on another piece of information. So.
Right, but I'm wondering if it's even worth recreating those relationships or just querying the Facebook graphic when it's required to find out what's needed.
It's if that functionality exists just based off the information Facebook provides.
Right.
So you're either building the view yourself or you're using the one that User Relationships provides.
Right.
So for a site builder, it'd be great if they could connect relationships and not have to do anything custom, but if you're comfortable doing something custom, then you could just use the information that Facebook provides and, duplicate user relationship features.
He was talking about that before, about some way to just, when you first sign up, suck in the information on Facebook, which is one thing and probably not too difficult, but keeping them in sync is
exporting
a
it
little
or
bit
something.
more of a, and you can sync information down from Facebook, but you can't create a friend relationship on Facebook.
Right.
So they couldn't create one on Drupal and have it be reflected that way.
Okay, yeah.
You mean without going to Facebook and actually doing the invite process?
Yeah, you would have to. Yeah, Facebook.
You don't have the API to go say, well, they've given me permission offline.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is probably good. I don't know. I don't think I would want sites creating relationships on my behalf.
So the reason you're talking about OG is because the relationships is only user to user.
Right.
It's not user to other things.
And it's not single user to multiple users. It's
Right.
just one user to one user to one user.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Could you go into a little more detail about when you would use this module versus OG?
So OG is really based around content, where this is based around the users themselves. So when you're following somebody or friending somebody with user relationships, you're interested in just that person. With organic groups, you're interested in an issue, you're interested in a collection, and you may not really even care about the other people that are part of that group, except when they post to the group. So you're following the group instead of the person in that case.
So you could create a group of people who are all skateboarders,
Mm-hmm.
and they could just talk about skateboarding, something like that.
Right, exactly.
And then amongst that, that could still correlate with that other relationship thing. So if they wanted to do individual things or talk, they could.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could pretty easily create a block in an organic group that said, these are my friends that are part of this group, that kind of thing. So you can both can function at the same time.
So is there any other ones that tie in with these things that maybe you're not mentioning? That could...
The user relationships page has the authoritative list, as far as I know. So these are all the ones that come with the module, and then down here is everybody else that either has support within their module or implements the API.
So if you're making something like a Match.com, this would be perfect, like a dating site or something.
Yeah, I think that it would work for that case. I haven't seen anybody, that sort of has claimed the use of the module in terms of a big high-profile site that uses it. But.
So I have a question then. In Facebook, you have this thing where once you friend someone, you can see their friends' comments that appear on their profile and their comments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this sort of vicarious relationship with their friends that didn't exist before you friended them in person. Does does the user relationships module have a similar kind of vicarious relationship?
Yeah, it's usually called friend of a friend, and there's nothing in user relations yet. I know it's a common feature request, but it would have to be done custom, and there's a lot of processing that needs to happen to figure that out. So I don't know. Something like Apache Solr might be able to provide that information for you easier than even a PHP query. I don't know.
So in these relationships, are people allowed to upload things, videos, or other things to show, and almost like create their own little websites and stuff like that?
They have the full functionality of Drupal, so user relationships doesn't provide any integration into that besides just connecting the users and their content.
So if I wanted to, is there a module that would allow them to kind of make things and move them around, just to create like their own little pages or something? Is there a way to add that in?
Well, that's handled by a different module called panels.
Okay.
And so this is just handling the relationships between users. And because I know a little bit about because we talked earlier, you're going to be assembling a group of modules that are going to each handle one thing, and you want panels for that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's the embedded video or embedded media module for other like videos and stuff. And then we were talking about streaming and use Flow Player, or there's some other systems for that.
All right, well, it looks like we're out of time, so thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for the good questions.
You know what they'll have to do? When he's on the screen, everything he does, it captures everything they do. This whole thing, and then I can go and play that.